So, welcome back. Today I'm going to fix a Missile Command board that, well, it's not working. So, let's see what happens when we turn it on. Going to go ahead and start the Fluke up. Tell it to, I just typed run UUT 0, address 0, and you can see it's not doing anything on my screen there. Okay. Alright, just putting this here so I can see that if I'm getting a good picture of what I want you guys to see. Okay, so what do? Anyone who's been watching this should know, always check the power first. Even though, if you can see, my power says 5.6, that's not actually on the board. You always want to check power on the board because you lose voltage between all the cabling before it gets to the board and things like that. So I always put it out, always test it on a chip or on the rails. You can see the rails here. It's showing I have 4.07. I could turn it up, but it's actually fine. I'm going to leave it. 5 is fine. 4.7 is fine. You should turn it up. Alright, fine, we'll turn it up. Did I just turn it down? I did turn it down. Alright, this thing is drawing a lot of power, so it says 4.65. I can't get it up any higher. Probably because these guys are probably pulling all the power. It's alright. We're going to just leave it that way because I know it will work. Normally you want to make sure that power gets up there. Alright, so we got power. Hook up our oscilloscope. Next thing we do is what? That's right. Good job. Check your CPU clock. And I can't really do it while the Fluke's in there because it's in the way. So I'm gonna put back the processor. We're gonna check the CPU clock. That is the 4th from the last pin here. And if you're looking at that screen, you can see we're good. 1.25 megahertz. And I'm going to check the reset pin. It's the last pin, pin 40. And you can see that's also definitely going up and down. Okay. So, and you only see one because it's only showing one in that time frame that it triggers. But it's definitely going up and down. If I change the timing, move this up a little bit so you can see that. If I change my timing, that's not my timing. There's my timing. Ah, here we go. It's almost as if I forgot how to use this thing. There we go. We can see when I put it on more real time or a time frame closer, which is a 1/4 of a second per whatever that thing is. Those breaks are. You can see it happening. So anyway, all right. So to the Fluke. Oh, we got to plug the Fluke in to turn off that. Get rid of that CPU. Most Missile Command boards are bad memory issues. So you can see we have bus test okay. We're going to go ahead and maybe I'll put that up there so you can see what's going on. We're going to do a RAM long 0 to 3 FFF because that's the RAM range on the Missile Command board, and let it run for a while. This will take a few minutes before it fails because of the specific error that we're getting. back in a bit. Okay, we're back, and we have a RAM DCD error at all zeros, bit 0. So normally what that means is at bit 0, which is the first address bit, it doesn't matter whether the Fluke sees a 0 there or a 1 there in the address. Either of the addresses that would have a 0 or a 1 in that, with all the other bits being whatever they are acting the same. But this can be deceiving sometimes, especially on boards like Missile Command, which has 8 RAMs, 1 bit per RAM. Often you can be deceived by the Fluke's reports. So the thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to validate this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write 0 to address 0 and then read it. I get 0. Okay? I'm going to read address 1, which would be the same address. Well, if the first bit doesn't matter whether it's 0 or 1, then address 0 and address 1 should read the same values. They don't, which means it might not be a DCD error. So one thing I will do is if I read one address, I write to one address, read it, and then the corresponding address doesn't match, I do the opposite. I write to the corresponding address. I'm going to write, I don't know, 55. I'm sorry, write 1 to 55, read 1, make sure it's there, it is, then read the other address, and it doesn't read 55, but you read this, you see this, read 0, bit 1 is set. Well, that's odd. So something did happen, but it was not, it's actually not exactly DCD, because the DCD error, I should read 55 when I read 0. But clearly something has changed. So what I'm going to do here is I just was playing around. I'm going to write zeros to a bunch of values. Write 0, 0, read 0. Read 1, it's 5, 4. So write 1, 0. Read 1, 0. And then write 2, 0. Read 2. Okay, so I write zeros to all these positions. Now I'm going to write just FF to 0. I'm sorry, I'm going to write address 2FF. And I read address 2, I get FF, good. Read address 1. Oh, wait. It went from 0 to 1. Read address 0. It went from 0 to 1. So it seems like whenever I do anything, the low bit is actually getting set, regardless of the address. So it's not a DCD error, but that could show up as a DCD error because during the test, it just happens that it appeared as if, because of the way the Fluke, at least the Fluke long does it, is it writes 1 bit, it changes 1 bit at a time. So when it went through and it wrote to all the other addresses, it wrote to 0, made it 0 or whatever it was, it went to all the other addresses making them 0. And when it came back, then it did it to 1. And when it came back to 0, it noted that the bit had changed. That's a really horrible explanation. The point is, it's not really a DCD error. At least I don't think it is. And since I already fixed the board, I know it's not. So when this happens, it's clear that no matter what I do, because I could write write 3, 0, and I could write 2, 0, write 2, 0. No, that's not what I want. Write 2, 0. And write 3, 0. If I go back and read, say I write to 3, and I read 2, I get 1. So it's always this low bit. So what we do is we take a look at the schematics and figure out what the low bit is. So we'll take a look at the schematics now. And you can see that the low bit, DRAM 0, or is handled by this 4116 at F4. Okay, so we looked at the schematics and we found that low bit is this chip, F4. So I'm going to go ahead and replace it. Replace it with another 4 116. Boot it up. Let's try that test again. Let's write 0. And actually, if you notice, I just booted up and already it's booting before I even did anything. So that looks like it's probably the issue, right? So let's just test it. Write 0, write 1, write 2, 0. So we made them all 0. Let's write 3. Let's write to 2, FF, read 1, or read 0, and it's still 0. It didn't go to 1. Read 1, still 0. If I write 2, 0, write 3, 0, write 3, 4. So now the changes should happen. Or write 3 FF. We'll read 2. It doesn't go to 1. So that's probably the issue. And I know it is because I fixed this board. I did a full RAM test with the new chip in, and we're good. And you can see it's booting here. So hope you enjoyed that. So the moral story is, don't always test. When you see a DCD error, don't always assume it actually is a DCD error. Try writing like zeros or F's to one value, finding what the corresponding address is for that bit with that DCD error, and then query that other address that should be corresponding, and see as you change one address if the other changes. You write to one address and then read the other address to see if it also changed. All right. See ya.